What would you do if your neighbor's dog turned your sanctuary into a battlefield? And she laughed it off. My name is Ellie, and I never thought I'd be the kind of person to wage war over a lawn. But Karen pushed me to the edge. This isn't just a story about a ruined yard. It's about pride, revenge, and the bitter cost of letting anger take the wheel. Started small, as these things always do. I'd moved to Willow Creek, a quiet suburb where picket fences and manicured lawns were practically a religion. My little house was my pride, my escape from a decade of city chaos. The backyard was my masterpiece. A vibrant garden of roses, lavender, and neatly trimmed grass that I'd spent years perfecting. Every morning, I'd sit on my porch with coffee, breathing in the calm. That was until Karen moved in next door. Karen was the kind of woman who radiated entitlement like cheap perfume. Mid-40s, always in pristine yoga gear, with a golden retriever named Duke that she treated like royalty. Duke was a gorgeous dog. I'll give her that. Fluffy, energetic, the kind of pup that could charm anyone. Except he had a habit. Every single day, Karen would let Duke off his leash, and he'd charge straight into my yard. He'd dig up my roses, trample my lavender, and leave steaming piles of chaos behind. The first time, I laughed it off. Dogs will be dogs, right? I knocked on Karen's door, all smiles, and politely asked her to keep Duke on a leash. "Oh, he's just playing," she said, waving a manicured hand. "He's a free spirit. You get it." Her smile was all teeth, no warmth. I didn't get it, but I tried to be neighborly. I asked again the next week, after Duke uprooted my tulip bulbs. Then again after he shredded my herb garden. Each time, Karen's response was the same. A shrug, a laugh, and that infuriating line, "He's just a dog, Ellie. Relax." By month 3, my backyard looked like a war zone, and my patience was a frayed thread. I tried everything. I put up signs asking dog owners to respect the property. Karen ripped them down, claiming they cluttered the aesthetic. I installed a low fence. Duke jumped it. I even called animal control, but they said it was a civil matter unless the dog was dangerous. Dangerous? Duke wasn't dangerous, just destructive. And Karen? She was untouchable, strutting around with her head high, as if my ruined yard was her personal victory. One night, after finding another pile of Duke's mess smeared across my patio, something snapped. I stood in the dark, staring at the wreckage of my garden, my hands trembling. This wasn't just about a lawn anymore. It was about respect, about being heard, about not letting someone walk all over you or let their dog do it for them. That's when the idea hit me. If Karen thought my yard was Duke's playground, I'd make it one she'd regret. The next morning, I rented a tiller from the hardware store. I didn't tell anyone, not my sister, not my friends. This was my fight. I spent hours tearing up the backyard, churning the soil into a thick, soupy mess. The roses, the lavender, the grass, all of it became a sea of mud. I worked until my arms ached, until sweat stung my eyes, until the yard was unrecognizable. Then I waited. Right on schedule, Karen let Duke out. He bolted for my yard, as always, but this time he sank into the mud. His golden fur turned brown as he floundered, yipping in confusion. Karen stormed over, her face a mask of outrage. "What the hell did you do to your yard?" she screamed, her voice carrying across the street. I leaned on my shovel, heart pounding. "You said Duke loves to play, so I made him a playground." Her eyes narrowed. "You're insane. This is vandalism." "Vandalism," I shot back. "You've been letting your dog destroy my property for months, Karen. You didn't care when it was my roses. Why care now?" Neighbors started peeking out their windows. Karen's face went red, but she didn't back down. "You'll regret this, Ellie. You have no idea who you're messing with." That was the moment I should have stopped. I should have seen the warning in her eyes, the way her voice dripped with venom. But I was too angry, too righteous. I'd won this round, hadn't I? Duke was a muddy mess. Karen was humiliated. And for once, I felt like I'd taken back control. I didn't know then that this was just the beginning. Karen didn't let it go. The next day, I found my mailbox smeared with dog feces. Childish but effective. I cleaned it up, telling myself it was just her throwing a tantrum. Then my car tires were slashed. I couldn't prove it was her, but the timing wasn't exactly subtle. I reported it to the police, but without evidence, they couldn't do much. Karen knew it. She'd stand on her porch, sipping wine, smirking every time I passed by. I doubled down. I ordered a truckload of manure and had it dumped in the muddy pit that was once my yard. The smell was horrific, wafting into Karen's perfect house. Duke still ran into the mess, tracking it everywhere, and Karen's screams of frustration were music to my ears. But it wasn't enough. I wanted her to feel what I'd felt: helpless, disrespected, ignored. Then things got darker. One night, I woke to the sound of breaking glass. My living room window was shattered, a brick lying in the debris. Scrawled on it in Sharpie was one word: stop. My heart raced, but I wasn't scared, not yet. I was furious. I installed security cameras the next day, but the damage was done. Karen wasn't just a bad neighbor anymore. She was an enemy. The neighborhood started taking sides. Some sympathized with me, tired of Karen's arrogance. Others thought I'd gone too far, that turning my yard into a swamp was unhinged. My sister, Mia, begged me to move. "This isn't worth it, Ellie," she said over coffee, her eyes worried. "She's not going to stop, and neither are you." "She started it," I said, my voice hard. "I'm not backing down." Mia sighed. "Pride's a dangerous thing. You're both too stubborn to see where this is going." I didn't listen. Couldn't. Every time I saw Karen's smug face, every time Duke bounded into my yard, I felt that fire in my chest. I started leaving the sprinklers on, turning the mud into a deeper, stickier trap. Duke would get stuck. Karen would have to wade in to get him, and I'd watch from my porch, savoring her humiliation. But Karen was relentless. She filed a complaint with the Homeowners Association, claiming my yard was a public nuisance. They fined me $500 and threatened legal action if I didn't restore the lawn. I paid the fine but left the mud. I wasn't giving her the satisfaction of winning. Then came the anonymous letters, slipped under my door at night. "You're pathetic. Move out. You'll pay." I knew it was her. The cameras caught nothing. She was too smart for that. One evening, I caught her in my yard, pouring something from a canister. I ran out, yelling, "What are you doing?" She dropped the canister and bolted. It was weed killer, enough to poison what little remained of my soil. That was it. Line had been crossed. I didn't just want revenge anymore. I wanted to destroy her. I started small, petty. I'd leave bags of muddy soil on her porch. I'd crank my music at dawn, knowing she hated it. But it escalated. I found her social media, saw her bragging about her perfect life, her perfect dog. I created a fake account and posted comments exposing her negligence, her entitlement. The neighborhood group chat lit up. Karen's reputation took a hit, and I felt a twisted satisfaction. Then came the night that changed everything. It was late, past midnight, when I heard Duke barking frantically. I looked out my window and saw flames. Me shed, where I kept my gardening tools, was on fire. I called 911, but by the time the fire department arrived, it was gone. The police questioned Karen, but she had an alibi. A dinner party with witnesses. I knew it was her. She knew I knew. The next day, I stood in the ashes of my shed, my hands shaking. This wasn't about a dog or a yard anymore. It was war, and I was done playing fair. I stood in the charred remains of my shed, the acrid smell of smoke clinging to my clothes. The police had left, their notepads filled with my accusations and Karen's denials. No proof, they said. No witnesses. Just my word against hers. But I knew. The fire wasn't an accident, it was Karen's escalation. Her way of saying she'd burn my world down before she'd leash her dog. My hands curled into fists. If she wanted war, I'd give her one she'd never forget. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the security footage, replaying the grainy image of a shadowed figure near my shed. It was too blurry to prove anything, but the way the figure moved quick, deliberate, screamed Karen. I couldn't go to the police again, not without evidence. So I decided to fight fire with fire. Literally. I didn't burn her house down, don't get me wrong. I'm not a monster, but I needed something big, something that would hit her where it hurt. Her pride, her perfect image. Karen loved her pristine front yard. A showcase of roses and sculpted hedges that screamed, "Look at me." I'd seen her out there, pruning, preening, basking in the neighbors' compliments. If my yard was a pit, hers would be next. I waited until 2 a.m., when the street was silent. Armed with a bucket of leftover mud from my backyard and a pair of gloves, I crept across the lawn. My heart pounded, but anger drowned out fear. I dumped the mud across her roses, grinding it into the soil with my boots. I tore up her hedges, snapping branches until they sagged. For good measure, I scrawled, "Leash your dog," in mud on her white fence. It was petty, vicious, and deeply satisfying. The next morning, Karen's scream woke the neighborhood. I watched from my window as she stood in her ruined yard, hands in her hair, shrieking at the mess. Neighbors gathered, whispering, pointing. For once, her perfect facade was cracked, and I felt a surge of triumph. But it was short-lived. Karen didn't call the police. She didn't need to. By noon, a landscaping crew arrived at her house, replacing the ruined plants with even flashier ones. By evening, her yard looked better than before. She stood on her porch, sipping wine, smirking at me. The message was clear. I could destroy her yard, but she'd always come out on top. She had money, connections, and a knack for twisting the narrative. I was just Ellie, the crazy neighbor with a muddy pit for a backyard. That's when I realized I was losing. Not just the battle, but myself. I barely recognized the woman I'd become, sneaking around at night, sabotaging roses, consumed by rage. Mia's words echoed in my head. "You're both too stubborn to see where this is going." I didn't want to admit she was right, but the truth was sinking in. This wasn't about justice anymore. It was obsession. I tried to pull back. I stopped antagonizing Karen, stopped adding to the mud pit. I even started replanting my backyard, hoping to reclaim some peace. But Karen wasn't done. A week later, I found Duke in my yard again, digging through my new seedlings. Karen stood at the fence, watching, her smile cold. "Oops," she said. "He slipped out." I snapped. "You're doing this on purpose," I yelled, storming toward her. "You think you're untouchable, but you're not." She laughed, unfazed. "Careful, Ellie. People are starting to talk. They think you're unhinged. Keep this up, and you'll be the one moving." Her words hit like a slap. The neighborhood was talking about me. The woman who turned her yard into a swamp, who fought with Karen over a dog. I was the villain in their story, not her. I went inside, my chest tight, and cried for the first time in months. Not for my yard, but for what I'd let this feud do to me. I decided to end it, not with revenge, but with proof. I upgraded my security cameras, adding motion sensors and night vision. I documented every time Duke entered my yard, every smirk Karen threw my way. I built a case, meticulous and undeniable. It took weeks, but I had footage. Duke digging, Karen watching, even a clip of her letting him out deliberately. I took it to the homeowners association, the police, and the local animal control. This time, they listened. Karen was fined for violating leash laws and ordered to pay for damages to my property. It wasn't much, $1,000, a drop in her bucket, but it was something. I thought it was over. I thought I'd won. Then came the night of the storm. It was a brutal one, rain pounding, wind howling. I was home, sipping tea, when I heard a frantic knock. It was Mia, soaked and pale. "Ellie, it's Duke. He's out there, in the mud. I think he's hurt." I ran outside, the rain blinding me. In the middle of my muddy pit, Duke was struggling. His leg caught in a tangle of roots I hadn't cleared. He whimpered, his golden fur plastered with mud. Karen was nowhere in sight. Against every instinct, I waded in, the mud sucking at my boots. I freed Duke, carrying him to my porch, where Mia wrapped him in a blanket. He was shivering, his leg bleeding from a deep cut. I called Karen, but she didn't answer. I left a voicemail. "Your dog's hurt. Come get him." Hours passed. No response. Mia and I cleaned Duke's wound, gave him water. He licked my hand, his eyes soft, and for a moment, I saw him not as Karen's weapon, but as a dog innocent caught in our war. Karen showed up at dawn, her face pale. "Where's my dog?" she demanded, but her voice cracked. I pointed to Duke, sleeping on my couch. She rushed to him, kneeling, tears in her eyes. I'd never seen her vulnerable before. Through me. "He was stuck in the mud," I said. "You didn't answer your phone." She didn't look at me. I was out. I didn't know. Her hands trembled as she stroked Duke's fur. "Is he okay?" "He'll be fine," Mia said softly. "But he needs a vet." Karen nodded, still not meeting my eyes. She carried Duke home, and I thought that was the end of our feud, sealed by a moment of shared humanity. I was wrong. The next day, Karen filed a lawsuit. She claimed I'd neglected my yard, creating a hazard that injured her dog. She sued for vet bills, emotional distress, and absurdly defamation from my social media posts. The neighborhood exploded with gossip. Half thought Karen was a bully, half thought I'd gone too far. The lawsuit dragged on, draining my savings, my energy, my hope. In court, I presented my evidence. The footage, the fines, the months of destruction. Karen's lawyer spun a story of me as a vindictive neighbor, obsessed with revenge. The judge, tired of our petty war, ruled in neither's favor. We split the court costs, and Karen was ordered to leash Duke. That was it. No justice, no closure. I moved out a month later. I couldn't stay in Willow Creek, where every glance from a neighbor felt like judgment. My house sold for less than it was worth, the muddy yard a deal-breaker. Karen stayed, her yard pristine, her life untouched. Duke recovered, but I never saw him in my yard again. She'd won in a way, but at what cost? Looking back, I see the truth. We were both wrong. I let anger consume me, turning my sanctuary into a battlefield. Karen let entitlement blind her, ignoring the harm she caused. Neither of us walked away clean. The real loser was the community we fractured, the trust we shattered. What would you do in my place? Was I right to fight back? Or did I cross a line? Where does justice end and revenge begin? Share your thoughts, because in conflicts like these, the line between right and wrong is as muddy as my yard became.